Okay, before we delve into whatever monstrosity we're talking about today, let me begin with a speech. We all have weaknesses, not just by typing, but, well, in real life. And it's hard to get over that. I mean, having obvious drawbacks does deter a lot of people from cooperating with you and acknowledging your skills. And there's one Pokemon in OU that definitely suffers from this trope the most.
Is it Ditto?
No.
Pyukumuku?
No.
Salazzle?
No.
Tentacruel?
No.
Giratina origin form?
No.
Primal Kyogre?
No! Ugh! Seriously, Ditto? You forgot the one fire-type wall that is good in OU?
It's Heatran?
Correct! You've been using this for the past 3 months and you still can't remember its name when I ask you about it.
Well, how would I associate rarely used because it has glaring flaws with Heatran, mate? Thing has probably the second best track record for an OU legendary, and it's really damn common in the competitive scene.
Ditto, you know not a lot of people dare to use a Heatran in low-ladder OU. Again, its few flaws are just too glaringly obvious for most people to get over, and those flaws are actually valid.
NANI?!
Oh well. Anyways, as per what you're saying, I'm pretty sure Heatran gets picked on by almost every single low ladder player. The reason? Some very common weaknesses in water, fighting, and ground. I mean, I don't say I don't relate with them. These types are very common in the form of the unholy ground type trio, a lot of fighting types that I won't go into, and lastly, just sheer super effective coverage. And I'll say, it takes some guts for a low ladder player to use this Hellmanns Mayo dispenser when ground types are basically everywhere.
But once you look past Heatran's glaringly obvious type weakness, you will realize that this thing is a defensive powerhouse. It resists 11 out of the 18 types in Pokemon and was 5 out of the 18 types in Pokemon normally, which means it isn't resistant. So it's only logical that people run free out of the 18 types in Pokemon that hit Heatran super effectively. And that's without taking into account Heatran's spectacular stats. 91 health is really good for a wall, and those 106 base defenses are nothing to scoff at. And then you turn your eyes to that 140 special attack stat, which is honestly really good for a wall. I mean, sure, that speed and attack is kinda middling, but who cares about that when you get to be a dispenser of fiery pain?
Mate, I thought you were the burn dispenser.
Silence, wench! First of all, Psycho Chilled Articuno dies to Heatran, and secondly, it sucks at everything else. Thirdly, Heatran isn't a burn dispenser, it is a chip damage dispenser, ditto!
Well, agreed. Its signature move, Magma Storm, has an impressive base power of 100, which is basically infestation slash whirlpool slash fire speed on steroids, aka free chip damage, and it also traps the opponent, which is a benefit. It also gets access to Stealth Rocks, which boy, oh boy, if you didn't know already, is one of the most impactful moves in the game, and every other useful status move, well including Toxic, but you don't really need that. So this thing should be the ultimate wall, right? Right?
Unfortunately, Game Freak decided that aside from Eternamax Eternatus, every other wall in Pokemon history needed to have an Achilles heel. In the Blissey line case, it was that horrible defense stat, and for Heatran, it was no recovery and a weakness to very damn common types. Let me explain. You see those Landers Arians? Those rain teams? Those things that desperately run ground coverage just to get Heatran? Yeah, ironically, Heatran's fame as a great wall to basically most of the entire game has led to way too many strategies developed to counter it. And no, I'm not just talking about its crippling type weakness and Pokemon with coverage of those types.
With what we call as leftover syndrome, in which leftovers is a requirement for these Pokemon that function as walls for recovery because they have no other options except rest. And well, Heatran becomes one of many things that would have been perfect for stall but don't manage to completely fill, due to a lack of recovery options aside from leftovers, meaning that one knockoff and Heatran could say goodbye to his recovery. Well, you could argue that a lot of Pokemon doesn't need recovery to fit on stall teams, and you'd be right. It's especially bad for Heatran because the thing cannot pivot unlike Swampert to get out of a hard spot, forcing it to basically give up its leftovers to trap a Clefable or a Toxapex. Basically, if a ground type switches in, either sack it or hope the opponent reads you wrongly on the switch. And Lord forbid you make a wrong read and get earth powered by an unsuspecting Kyurem.
We haven't even mentioned Magma Storm's pitiful accuracy of 75%, which is only a tiny amount higher than Focus Blast, and I can't stress enough just how many lost games when there's one move missing has cost me. Yeah, as I've said, it's not hard to see why people don't have a good first impression on Heatran, but Heatran is far from limited to being a pure wall and chip dispenser. For one, it can go offensive and run a Scarf set, which, if I'm being honest, is not a good idea. Regardless, Scarf Eruption under Sun is one of, if not the deadliest fire-type moves out there, rivaling even Tough Claw's Flail Blitz from a Mega Charizard X. And besides, Sting has decent coverage, so it does the job well. But that 278 speed is kinda par for the course, meaning it still gets outsped by other speedy boys like Scarflandorus and Dragapult. Kinda depressing, but no judgment because that thing can finally turn the tables on Landorus, Therian, and Kyurem. And when paired in the sun, it gains access to an instant solar beam, demolishing those cocky water types. Meanwhile, Heatran? I don't know, it just does normal Heatran's job, but exchanges recovery for a potentially game-changing nuke. And I mean, these sets do sound attractive for an offensively style player like me. I mean, you really can't resist the adrenaline rush when you yeet that Kyurem Undersun into the abyss with a full power eruption. Or smack a defensive Landorus Therian hard on the switch with a Z Magma Storm. As they say, there's no sweeter taste than that of revenge, but damn if I didn't say just how much of an impact not having leftovers has on using Heatran. Because without it, let's just say it feels like jumping out of the boiling pot of this OU straight into a stress-filled hell that not even Flashfire can save our Heatran from. Because having no leftovers turns Heatran's lifespan into the Pokemon embodiment of Astetine, which is to say, it's scorching hot, but it decays faster than my sanity when glue's involved.
One thing we can all agree on is that coupled with these obvious drawbacks, the power creep of many generations have not been kind to Heatran. With the arrival of Megas, such as Mega Charizard X with Earthquake, Garchomp still being meta in general, the Urshifu Twins edition, as well as copious amounts of offensive threats throughout the generation, Heatran has been constantly thrown to the side again and again. I mean, look at Tapu Fini. Misty Terrain undoes all of Heatran's toxic shenanigans, and that thing not only has Draining Kiss for recovery, as well as being super effective against Heatran. Many fighting types, and water types, are still common enough to give Heatran a run for its money, and don't even get me started on rain teams, oh boy. While what was the biggest blow yet to Heatran's usage was literally every single Pokemon getting close combat in Generation 8. And oh god does it hurt watching Heatran's health drop to an excruciatingly low point because you didn't expect a close combat. Notable examples are like Aegislash, Absol for some reason, Galarian Zapdos, Blaziken, and even Mega Lopunny. These mons that already intimidated Heatran, as was the case before, now having obtained one of Heatran's worst nightmares, it's no wonder why Heatran can't exactly thrive in such an environment. Sure, it resists basically every other type, but the fact that Heatran still gets neutered by these Pokemon that OHKO it without breaking a sweat. And unfortunately for it, that's the harsh reality we've all come to. But Heatran has more tricks up its non-existent sleeve.
ほう、向かってくるのか。 近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんでな。
ほほう。では十分近づくがよい。
Denied.
And this last trick up Heatran's non-existent sleeve, well, let's just say he's taken a page out of Fairforn's old book. He do not just attack, but also protect. What's the predicted close combat gonna do if Heatran just clicks protect? Well, for your worst case scenario, you're a bandit Pokemon and you click U-turn on a Heatran. He can just stay in and eat those rocks up, or unload a giant Magma Storm on your incoming Pokemon. Heatran will protect, scouts many different Pokemon's intentions, and makes the Heatran player more able to control the flow of battle. This set makes Heatran a perfect hit on balanced teams with Rillaboom, as grassy terrain makes it less vulnerable to earthquakes, and Heatran can assert a large defensive profile against threats such as Kartana, the occasional power trip Corviknight, while chipping opposing team members, and most importantly, Mega Scizor, as Heatran can just click protect to scout a potential superpower. Assuming that Scizor isn't max speed, then proceed to retaliate with copious amounts of chip damage.
Well, time for more hot takes and stupidity. I ran, wait for it, a defensive Heatran. You might be thinking that Spadef for Heatran is way better, but since I have a Spadef Rotom W on that dumpster fire of a team, I could afford to run physical defense on Heatran. And you might ask why I ran defensive in the first place. Well, with the mid-ladder being mainly focused on physical-oriented hyper-offense and some degree of stall, physically defensive Heatran can shine as my team's defensive backbone. There is one thing that sets my Heatran apart though, and that is body press. With that, my Heatran can finally push past stall teams relying on Chansey or Blissey to blanket check special attackers, and can heavily dent and trap Mega Sableye as well. Against hyper-offense teams, my Heatran can also commit some flummies, just as not needing to risk the 25% miss chance of Magma Storm against a +2 Bisharp. Oh, and I would like to mention, Sucker Punch only did half to Heatran there.
But why would you dare to let a Heatran stay in on a Garchomp, or a Landorus, or any ground type in general? That just sounds kinda stupid, not gonna lie.
It's at least better than PvPventure, you dunce!
Oh well, fair enough. And to those who think you can get away with running full status Heatran, don't underestimate that thing's coverage. Magma Storm and Earth Power can overpower many a stall mod without knockoff users like Mandibus or Toxapex or Clefable, which ditch their main attacks for it, as well as having taunts to remove any recovery slash status shenanigans, giving a superb opportunity for your hyper-offensive teammates to sweep. My favorite hyper-offensive teammates would usually be a Zapdos or Dragapult and Gen 8 OU, because yeah, that thing is really good at sweeping. One other partner in National decks I'd recommend is Mega Charizard Y. This may sound incredibly brainless, and I'd actually have to agree, but the boosted damage from Sun does help Heatran in dealing more chip damage, while at the same time walling the synergies that Charizard's check selective for around so much. Corviknight does this job equally well, and together, they become one of the most terrifying walls in the history of National decks. Tapu Lele is another special attacking nuke that can more often than not delete crucial checks to Heatran, allowing it to rampage late game.
Heatran can also partner with other stall mods like defensive Zapdos, as much as I hate to admit it. Now I know that Celesteela would sound more commonly run than Heatran on stall since it's also flying type, denying Heatran's terrible weakness, but A, it's weak to fire and electric, but Heatran loves to explode with earth power, and B, it lacks taunt or toxic, which can turn the tables on most stall teams. And besides, Heatran, while being a steel type itself, is a direct check to most of the steel types in the meta. In short, Heatran is indeed a jack of all trades and masters them equally well.
This thing ages like fine wine. The offensive sets are honestly brainless, but worth the sanity you pay for using them, while balanced Hellmanns Mayo is a defensive powerhouse. Sure, it gets thrown around by grounds and waters and fighting boys, but that definitely is enough to knock it out of the park. Besides, you have an actual team in Showdown, so use it to the best of your abilities, and check those other Pokemon. If you can't beat them, well, join them and beat them on their own game. To put it straight, we really can't encourage you to use this Mayo Toad more. Experiment with it, build a good team, eventually figure out what style you like, and stick with it because you'll be doing that until the end of time. And yeah, that's all we have to say about it.
On a final note, since the meta Pokemon in PvPventure OU is Scarf, Outrage, Garchomp with Stone Edge, Poison Jab, or / Iron Head with Earthquake, since Heatran resists or is outright immune to half its moves, it's obvious that Flame Body Heatran is one of, if not the best checks on switch to a Garchomp, right? I mean, just switching a Flying type, bait it and outrage,
You
go to
never learn your
Heatran,
lesson,
trap it,
do
burn the
you?
Garchomp, and shift the Garchomp as well.